if you're not a person that's following NXT, and I kind of loosely follow it, and this whole situation is kind of along with Ethan Page, who, again, I predicted he'd be a good guy to be in NXT about a month ago. Look what happened. But, not to toot my own horn or all. But, I mean, I'm feeling a need to want to watch NXT a little bit more, because if you missed it this past week, Jordan Grace, the current TNA Knockout champion, shows up on NXT airwaves. We all saw her at the Royal Rumble. We all figured that was kind of a one-off fun deal like they did with Mickie James and TNA a few years back. But she shows up on NXT, challenges Roxanne Perez for her championship at Battleground, which is next weekend for when we're recording this. And there's been a lot of stories since then that this may not just be a one-off thing. We may see Jordan Grace a little bit more in NXT here, and we may even see NXT talent on TNA. But that's not really where the plot thickens. The plot now thickens because a story this week from Dave Meltzer points at, it makes things seem a little fishy what's going on with TNA and WWE. He reported this week that there's been issues going on backstage at TNA. If you haven't been following it, TNA fired Scott D'Amore, who's kind of like the Paul Levesque of TNA, on an upward swing. He was a key part of this kind of upward swing there. They fired him in February. It was reported this week another key member of the creative team is out. They don't have events scheduled past early in August, and we're getting pretty close. We're in June now. And Dave Meltzer noted that the fact that this is happening in the backstage, and now all of a sudden they have this kind of relationship with WWE, is interesting. Adding on to that, Shawn Michaels did an interview this week hyping Battleground coming up. He talked to this network and his TV channel in Las Vegas, and he makes this quote. He says, "It's a very exciting time to be a wrestling fan, and we'll see how much of it culminates at Background on June 9. I'm sure a lot of things are going to be going on that night, so I wouldn't miss it." So him pointing to that night specifically, where Grace is facing Roxanne Perez, it seems funky. Now, there were reports that TNA was not going to sell when D'Amore left, because I know D'Amore tried to buy the company, but maybe they are now. Or maybe there's something else in there. Is there maybe a working relationship? This is different times. It's not just buy them up and throw them away. Maybe there's, Paul Levesque and Nick Khan seeing the value of having working relationships, the Forbidden Door opening, a brand like TNA that's been around for a long time. What are your thoughts? Like, where do you think this is going? Because it seems much more than a little crossover for a month.
Yeah, there's so many interesting pieces to this, and to your point, they wouldn't be making teases like that. It's way too coincidental to have Jordan Grace, the Knockouts champ, showing up in NXT, and all of a sudden Shawn Michaels is teasing something else for Battleground and beyond. It's they really kind of go hand in hand. What's interesting about this whole scenario too is thinking back now, because when Scott D'Amore was dismissed and relieved of his duties, it was pretty much out of left field, especially with the momentum that TNA had been building, and then it came out like you mentioned that he was actually looking to buy TNA. So with this scenario now, I wonder if talks with WWE had been going back as far as that, even farther back, and with maybe D'Amore wasn't part of the plans, or him trying to buy it, maybe Anthem had already had talks with WWE about potentially selling to them, and they didn't want to kind of rock that boat or mess that up. So it's just food for thought. It's just speculation, but it's super interesting to think about. Having said that, I'm excited for it. You know what I mean? TNA is such an interesting entity, because they should have been dead like 10 times over by now, but yet here they are, in probably the best position they've been in at least a decade.
Yeah.
And people are genuinely excited for the talent. A lot of it had to do with Jordan Grace too. She went over super well in her appearance in the Rumble. Fans that were familiar with her work were also excited to see her, and fans that weren't saw how impressive she can be. And apparently she made a really great impression backstage, and they're happy to have her. So this lends to potential dream matches with other TNA talent, whether it's Joe Hendry, which would be super fun, or Moose, cats like that. So yeah, it's a very interesting development. How much it ties into WWE is going to be super interesting to follow, whether it's in an official capacity or just working together. It's a fun development for sure.
And let me just add this too, because the other storylines or the rumors and speculation when D'Amore was fired was that he wanted to expand the payroll. And they were kind of doing that already. They were signing big names. They were trying to get more big names. Dolph Ziggler was a big name they brought in and stuff like that. And Anthem wasn't in favor of that. This would be a smart business move financially for Anthem. Let's say they're not selling, but let's say they want to work with WWE, and WWE has a big influence and they have a say, or maybe WWE wants to put someone that has on their creative team to in this working relationship that's a long-term thing, because instead of purchasing big free agents to add to your roster. You're spending no money by bringing in an NXT crossover, a WWE crossover. Reportedly, Jordan Grace is supposed to get like 6 figures for her appearances coming up that WWE is supposed to be paying for. So if WWE has this huge money and they're willing to maybe pay for a talent to come over, that saves Anthem a lot of money while giving them an interesting product that's tied to the hottest brand in the world and is kind of working with them. So there's so many interesting and also smart of them, like, oh, if they were like, wait, we want to be main roster, then they wouldn't know. It wouldn't have worked. But leaning into this NXT thing, the crossovers there, it'll possibly open the door for more things at WWE. And there's so many interesting things. I mean, you got Matt Hardy there, who, you know, there's been rumbling about him going into WWE. Matt Hardy, who wouldn't want to see Moose pop up on there? You know, Joe Hendry mentioned Sami Callihan, who's been around so long. It'd be interesting. If there was a time for him to show up, this would be now. Imagine a Sami Callihan and a Kevin Owens feud or Sami Zayn feud. That'd be fantastic. And then the other direction, like you mentioned, imagine in this unique scenario, AJ shows up in TNA again after all these years. What a story that would be. The Good Brothers have a history there, them going back. You know, even Naomi had a history there for a little bit. You know, there's so many interesting that people going back and stars, and there's so many links between WWE's history and when TNA got big and the people that were there. Imagine, like, for storylines like Eric Bischoff showing up in TNA again. You know, like that kind of just playing to that negative history. There's so many options, so fascinating. It'll be interesting. It makes me want to watch NXT. I want to see where NXT is going just because where this crossover stuff goes. I'll probably watch Battleground now. I wasn't planning to. I'll probably watch it now. I want to see what they do with Ethan Page. It was a great signing. I think it was a great idea. And putting him right at the top again. My suggestion, just put me on the creative team, people.
The crystal ball is alive and well, man.
Exactly.